Hey everybody, welcome. We'll get started here in just a minute, give people time to filter in. Good call. Let me get the recording set up. Oh, Tapioca's here. We're good.
Hey guys, how you guys doing?
Good man. How you doing, Kaiser?
Good. Hey Cujo.
Good morning. Good morning.
Welcome everybody. So Brian's running a little bit late. We're gonna get started anyway, and I think there's a lot of developments coming up. The big topic that we definitely want to cover in some detail today is KIP 15, the proposed alliance with C3. So obviously C3 approached us before their launch and posted an RFC on our forum. And we spent some time evaluating. They reached out to us to basically get some advice from our carbon market experts and policy team on how to structure things. So Brian in particular has been providing input on their tokenomics and policy. So that sort of led naturally to this alliance being proposed. The idea being that Klima is ultimately supposed to be a neutral party, right? Like we're trying to be the central bank or the decentral bank, really, for the on-chain carbon markets. So while we launched with Toucan as our launch partner, we're by no means bound to only accept Toucan credits or any particular credit at all. It's up to the community and the policy team to evaluate each bridging partner that approaches us and to determine whether it's advisable to add those assets into the treasury based on the bridging technology, for instance, that's used, or the trustworthiness essentially of the development team, and also the how decentralized, how much risk is there in the bridge itself due to something like relying on a centralized bridging process. So that sort of sets up, I think, the context in which the C3 Alliance is coming forward. And the reason we've proposed it, so like they originally were kind of following in the footsteps of Redacted Cartel, which approached, was sort of spawned from Olympus and approached Olympus and basically said, like, here, take 10% of our treasury and like, please help us, help us govern the protocol. Let us be essentially a sub department. They call themselves a branch of Olympus. So C3 initially kind of framed their RFC in that context, but as we talked to them more and as the situation evolved, it became clear that like Klima directly managing a bridge is not necessarily the best path forward, because we want there to be healthy competition among the bridgers, and we also want there to be we want to remain neutral in terms of like not favoring any one bridge above another, but rather allowing the bridges to compete in an open market and distinguish themselves based on their features and their fee structure and adoption. So Klima is here to provide liquidity. Klima is here to be a sort of trusted partner in the space. And the alliance with C3 is really structured in such a way that we are basically going to exert influence over C3's future through the governance process that they're establishing. And because we're being allocated 10% vested over 3 years, and our sort of outsized carbon position relative to pretty much every other player in the on-chain space, we're going to be able to capture a pretty large amount of control over the C3 governance process. And we want to ultimately make that meta governance piece of Klima a key feature of the protocol rather than like a tacked on afterthought, so that part of Klima's value will derive from its use as a sort of meta governance token that gives you rights to vote on other protocols governance processes like C3 will be doing with their grant to the KlimaDAO treasury. I think that sets it up. Brian, you want to take over, or any other topics for discussion today?
I know. I think that's a really good way to put it. Yeah, meta governance. There can be a lot of protocols in ReFi, and as KlimaDAO aims to be a decentralized carbon currency, we should have meta governance to go around with it, right? Uh, right now we're gonna have it, so we have a internal group in the DAO, so namely policy, partnerships, as well as the council, as well as some of the mods. I, specifically requested some of the mods that are very active in the channel to participate in the governance to determine initially the votes, but eventually we're gonna switch to a more decentralized method where holders of Klima are able to vote for it, right? And this is just to decentralize the whole, voting mechanism, right? I really don't want to govern more than one protocol at a time. I think it's too much power on policy's plate. That's too much power on anybody's plate, to be honest. But by decentralizing the power onto the token holders, I think it's a very much more robust and nicer system, right? The benefit for the protocols, like external protocols, is that you know, as they're aligned with KlimaDAO and as more partners align with KlimaDAO, you guys they all have like a stake for Klima to succeed, just like how Klima has a stake for all the protocols to succeed. So it makes a really good balance of power in that regard there. But yeah, I don't know have much to talk about this week. I mean, the reward rate reduction is underway. We are around, I think, about halfway done with the reward rate. So I think another week or so we'll reach 1,000, and I think we have some KIPs in the works to launch after that, right? As you lower the APY, the whole as you lower the APY, you become more stable or you feel more predictive. That's a better way to say it, right? And with predictability becomes stability in one function or another, and with that you can kind of better predict what's going to happen in the future. So that with that you can do more future forward looking things with the KIPs. So we're going for that to happen, but yeah, let's put up some questions. Let's bring up some people for questions if they have any.
Okay, feel free to raise your hands.
Or I can talk about their tokenomics if we want to talk about that with the VE model and or anything about that. Talk about the pros and cons of it from what
Yeah,
I've seen.
yeah, I think that would be good. I know there's been a lot of questions about, like, especially the relationship between governance rights and locking and the gauges and how that all fits together.
Yeah, so this is my opinion, right? It's not C3's or what. I don't want to bash on C3. I don't want to like praise them or whatever. But so in my view, token holders they have this three distinct, I guess, categories, right? There are those who are there are token holders who are purely speculative on the price of the token, right? And those are the very short-term actors, and they don't really care about governance. There are those who want to use the utility of the token or like another way, for revenue share or whatever additional uses the token has, right? And then there are those who want to hold the token for governance power, right? So although most of them, like there's some overlap, right? You can think of it as like a Venn diagram with three of them. There are actors who don't want or who purely value the governance, and there are those who really value the utility. But there are those who don't value those same people don't value the speculative access, right? Like for a DAO or for like big protocols like us, we care less about the speculative nature of C3, and more of the governance and utility value, right? And then vice versa, there are short-term actors who clearly just care about the revenue share and the speculative nature, and that's fine, right? That's totally fine. But what the VE model does, in my opinion, is like it helps separates those actors, right? So now you have this kind of two token system without the two token system. You know, you have the regular C3 token, which is for people who want to speculate on the price and don't really care about governance and revenue share and all the other utility. And then there are the VE C3 holders, those who don't care about speculative nature because they have locked it up for a very long period of time and care about the governance, right? KlimaDAO obviously falls in the latter. There are those who fall in the former, but that's how I kind of see the VE model. With their emission schedule, it's a 4 billion over a couple of years. I mean, the way I see it is that they're kind of subsidizing growth in the future, right? Or for the next long term. And I think that's fine. I think that's very thoughtful, mainly because ReFi is a very nascent and very new space, right? So you kind of need this short-term incentive structure. I say short-term, but it's for 4 years to incentivize people to perform actions you want in the space, right? I always see like tokenomics as shifting the equilibrium, the Nash equilibrium, to do what the protocol wants to do, right? Like for example, currently we kind of see that the only reason why people bridge tokens on chain is because of the arbitrage opportunity, right? Now with their C3 tokenomics, now there's an external factor that also people can take account of when bridging, right? From the documentation, it seems that you bridge tokens, you are given C3 tokens. I don't know what the bridge gauge. So now you're gonna have this new dynamic, right? Where not only do you have to account for the arbitrage, but you can also account for the amount of C3 tokens, right? Whether or not the C3 token is valuable, is up to interpretation, is up to being seen, but it's an interesting dynamic, right? You kind of have this new way of acquiring governance on a low cost basis, for free essentially, for doing things you were going to do anyways. So I think that's cool. I think that's interesting. If I were going to have some critiques about it, I will say the ambition schedule is very aggressive, right? And if it's really aggressive, but they don't have any utility early on, that could spell very interesting dynamic, or that could be, I want to say a downfall, but I would say they would have a value to spare kind of dealio. Most token projects, Klima included, they have a what's it called? They go up really fast because of initial hype, and then they kind of go to the troll disillusionment, and then they go back up to the actual known value, right? And sorry, guys, away Discord notifications. There we go. But yeah, I mean, I think they have a good bridge. I think all bridges are good. I think Toucan's bridge is good. I think Flow bridge is good. I think C3 token is good. But the tokenomics kind of add another layer of depth that we haven't seen yet. So I'm excited to see how ReFi kind of evolves from it. I think tokenomics is a very interesting, piece of blockchain or DeFi that it hasn't been explored too much in ReFi, right? Other than KlimaDAO. I know there's other projects, but I haven't seen them kind of embrace DeFi for the tokenomics as much as C3. So interesting to see there.
Cool. I think the only other piece of like news, I guess, is that we did pass the KIP to disband 25% of the BCT USDC LP. So we're working internally on the proposals of what to do with some of that value, especially the USDC side. So yeah, keep an eye out for those. Otherwise, the BCT will go towards backing for now. It'll just sit in the treasury and be more reserves.
Yeah. So with the USDC, I think I've established this on the KIP. So what we can do, well, one, we can you can use them for inverse bonds, right? Because now USDC has it has demand outside of KlimaDAO, so that's a method. Or we can use it to bolster the Klima USDC pool, right? And that's the two main options we have presenting and we're thinking about. So keep an eye out on that. Oh yeah. Maybe a little bit too soon, but here we'll talk about it anyways. There's a concept I wanted to talk to you guys about, and we're like read it to you guys before I kind of dive in a little bit deeper in the paper later. But Archimedes here. Maybe I should stop now.
We do have a question up. So Oli did, if you want to go ahead and ask your question, we can address it.
Sure. So the price went from almost 4,000 per Klima to 20 per Klima. What drove it up to 4,000, and why do you think it's at 20? Other than just giving some answer like market conditions, blah blah blah. Like, what's the real answer?
Well, I think you're asking us to speculate, honestly, because anyone who claims they know why a market behaves one way or the other is not familiar with the way markets work. There's no single.
You don't know who. So you don't know who sold or dumped all their shares on the market, and
Well, look, like
who
it's all
was
on,
buying. You don't have any
it's all
idea.
on
You're
chain.
saying.
So like if you want to go do wallet analysis, and that's actually something we do want to do more of, is specifically around like narratives. There's certain FUD narratives around.
Got
Like,
it. So you don't want to answer the question. Okay. So then my other question is: Did you Archimedes or Markets Aurelius sell your shares at those elevated prices, or did you still have 100% of your Klima shares?
Diamond hands, man.
Diamond hands, indeed.
I think you'll find that we're all here because we're working for the long-term success of Klima, right? And like, if we wanted a quick, buck, there are a lot of ways to make a quick buck in crypto.
So if we do the market analysis, the wallet analysis, we'll see that you guys have not sold your shares.
Not only you see that, you'll see that I voted on every single proposal.
Yeah.
Why would I give that up?
Yeah.
Selling basically implies that you don't want to say anymore in the DAO, right? And so as core members, like who have substantial holdings, like you need those to exercise your right to vote, right? And so everyone on the core team has substantial holdings because they want to vote and they want to participate in the governance of what's happening.
So you have
And
no
so, like,
idea why it went from 4,000 to $20 a share. I mean, it's lost almost 100% of the value.
Well,
I just don't understand how you have no idea how that happened.
So we can talk about economics, right, and the market and how markets work, right? So one thing to keep in mind is that the supply of Klima has increased by about 10x since we launched. So just like totally agnostic of all other market conditions, right? Like if supply increases, you expect price to go down, right? I mean, that's just economics 101. Now we have an incentivized supply disruption built into the protocol. But I guess the point I'm really trying to get at is, like, you're asking us to say, like, to explain like why markets are markets, like why people,
I mean, there's markets or markets, and I can see investments going down 25-50%, but to see an investment go down to almost 100%, there's more of an answer there than just markets or markets. Like, there's a reason, without just kind of giving some hand wavy answer. There's reasons. So, and you guys being the founder, I would assume would have a good idea on why that happened to your project.
I think that the question I'm struggling with really is, like, what kind of answer would satisfy you? Because, like, I think what you want us to say is something like, oh, early investors sold, or something like, and I don't, the data's all on chain. You're welcome to go see what percentage of IDO holders and Klima holders have sold and how large of an impact that's had on price historically. Like, those are all data-driven analytical questions, but I don't think
I want to know why. I mean, I lost a substantial amount of money. My friends lost a massive amount of money. A lot of people lost money, and I know personally. I want to know why everyone, money's, went down.
I'm sorry for your loss. I think that I know that's not much consolation, and but, like, we're here to build a long-term project. We're all committed. Most of us have quit our day jobs to work on this because we believe in what we're trying to do. We believe in the potential of the on-chain carbon markets, and also the importance of fighting climate change to save our planet. I don't have much more to say, and this isn't really necessarily germane to policy, because like, you're not asking, like, what policy decisions are we making and how does the impact of policy have, what impact does policy decisions have on markets' perception of value. You're asking, like, why historically has price not done a certain thing, and I'm not comfortable speculating at that level. And I don't
Okay,
think.
cool. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Hey, Lord Huddlemart, how's it going?
Good morning, everyone. How is everyone doing?
I'm gonna hodl till my pants fall off. Thank you.
Yeah, buddy. Okay. The last guy seemed pretty upset. A lot of investors, are, and rightfully so. But what I'm saying is, uh, been in crypto about a year. That's a blink of an eye. A lot of people have gotten wrecked with this project, but there are lessons to be learned. A, don't lose more than what you can afford to lose. B, don't go all in at once. You know what I mean? And C, I'm at this point, I'm not investing in Klima. I'm investing in the team. And I don't know if these guys know how much a dev hour costs, but those aren't cheap. And to have you guys working and to be on, our side, or you guys are something that we can invest in. I'm very grateful for that, because good talent, good help is hard to find, and you guys are still here. You guys could have pulled the rug.
Yeah, exactly. Like that's the thing. Is like uh, we're all here, and we're all still here. Like we're all also down bad. Like like you think that we're like you're alone in this? Like we're all also like holding onto our bags for dear life. Like there's definitely some outcome, and that's the thing is like over the last 4 months. So like we come up on 4 months or 5 months on the 18th of March, October, November, December.
6 months, Archie. 5?
Oh
5
man,
from launch,
time
6
flies.
from LBP.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
that's correct. Yeah, 5 from launch, 6 from LVP. Like, I don't know how, like, a year in crypto is fantastic, but like many of us have seen like not decades, but like decades in DeFi terms. But like, like we've been here since like 2016. Like some of us have seen both bear markets, right? We saw like all the hacks, we saw everything that's so we're here for a long time, right? Not a good time. It's we're gonna work and continue to work. And this is what I wanted to talk about is like, every single decision we've made in policy has always been about long-term growth. It's always been about like being resilient and making sure that sustainability of the protocol remains, right? In the 5 short months that we've existed, we've, taken in 16 million carbon tons, which is no small feat, right? Like I like to remind people that, Shell Oil themselves, one of the biggest oil producers in the world, has claimed that they will reduce 40 million tons by 2030. We're halfway there in 5 months. So to give you the context of the scale at which, it's always hard to like think about like what is a ton worth and like how much does it actually do. But that's like one thing. And the other thing too is like we've gotten a lot more structure. The DAO like contributor server is like running at like full tilt. Like people are building stuff. There's so much coming. Klima Infinity was a huge success. We launched that, and there's a lot of pipeline that's going through there. I mean, there's a lot, and we've all been here, and I definitely sympathize. Like I've been in the shoes of the people who have seen their bags go to zero, and then like you have to wait. Like I've sat on bags for years before something happened, so it's not like we don't take it lightly, and that's why like policy is such a serious position, is because we want to make sure that like we ensure that all the decisions we make have positive outcomes. So APY reductions, all that stuff, like that's all to make sure that we actually can sustain what we're doing. And so like it's all data driven and it's all math driven, right? Like there's no like we don't just decide stuff because we feel like it, right? We don't just be like, oh, we're reducing APY because like we hate the community. No, we reduce APY because we can't sustain the level of growth that we're talking about, right? So like if you look at how fast carbon came on chain in the first 5 months, like if you look at the data and like the structure, most of it came in the first 2 months, right? The last like 3 months has been steady growth, yes, but it's linear. It's no longer exponential, meaning that we have to dial back like our exponential growth because there's no way we'll see like an 80x in tonnage on chain in the next year. Like it's going to take a cataclysmic evolution to see those types of things. And maybe like with these new bridges like Flow, C3, whatever that's coming online, like maybe they have like the demand that comes with it, but we fundamentally have a protocol to maintain and ensure that the sustainability remains there. Financial sustainability, not just like eco sustainability. So that's why we dial these things, because like all these decisions like govern and center on one thing. It's like, can this operate as a profitable business, right? And if it doesn't, then we have a bit of trouble. We can't just like freely mint money at nauseum like they do in some projects run by a mysterious Italian guy and another guy who worked at a defunct Canadian exchange. But those ones, like, there's no policy decision making there. There's nothing that protects that. And like, if you look at Olympus too, like they take it very seriously. Like, I would argue in many cases that Klima is a little bit more liberal with its decision making. We are much more like, yes, we're conservative and we definitely like try and keep things in check, and we try and make sure that we monitor things. But at Olympus, like, they're ultra stingy about what they do, and they make sure that things are like to the T, basically very, very closely tied. So yeah, no, I mean, I guess what I'm saying in my rambling here is, like, I get it, I really do. But I'm in the trenches with you guys. I'm working, I'm building stuff. Like, this isn't gonna end for me at any time. Like, we've got tons and tons of time to build stuff, and we're gonna be here like in the next 3 years at least. So yeah. Any Voldemort, if you got another question, happy to go through it.
Self away from the word ohm, and or do you think it's fine?
Oh, I think we lost like the first half of your question. I didn't hear it.
My question
Only heard the
was
second.
when we try to obtain new investors, they're going to learn that we're an ohm fork, and that may come with some negative connotation. Would it behoove us to distance ourselves from the word ohm, or is it just it is what it is?
Kind of hard, because the two are intertwined, right?
Mhm.
Ohm forks get a bad rap because of like all the hilarious ohm fork Ponzi-nomics we saw like months ago, where people were like, the Ty Lopez fork was a really good example. I think that was the top signal. God, still can't believe he's trying to bring back Radio Shack. Anyway, like, there's definitely like a negative connotation with the word ohm fork. However, in the broader context of like DeFi and the ohm community, like, Klima is not only accepted, but it is largely like revered. Like, people really do respect it. They do get it. New people, yeah, like, it's a tough one. It's a tough, like, how do you explain it, right? But like, I think at this point we stand on our own 2 feet. Like, we have a very different MO. We run things completely differently. Yeah, we may have started as an ohm fork and like used the same mechanics, but ultimately, like, we built our own thing, and we're working on like a lot of our own mechanics and our own things that are coming with it. So maybe not distancing, but just saying like we are a derivative of ohm or something is probably like the proper terminology to talk about what we do. We definitely have a very different business model and proposition.
Okay, well, awesome. Shout out to whoever who made my meme. That thing is awesome.
I see it everywhere. It's awesome.
All right, guys, you enjoy your day.
Thanks, man.
Appreciate it.
See, we've been answering a bunch of shorter questions in the chat. Let's see, I think we have somebody with their hand raised. Hey, Kronborg.
Guys, first of all, awesome work, of course. Not so negative as the former guy. I'm actually pretty bullish, I would say. There came this report out the other day that was super, super, super bad comparing to the CO2. I'm just curious if you had anyone reacting to that report in a positive way towards the Klima Infinity.
Which report? Is it the UN one you're talking about?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, the one that's like the world's a disaster and we're, to
That's
blame
the
for
one.
it. Yeah. Classic UN sensationalism. No, yeah, like it's okay. So pipeline for Klima Infinity is large. Like it's actually astronomical. I think there's like 60 partners or something. Sai was saying that are lined up. They just have to go through it all. Like it's taking forever. And then we have like a lot of people like doing very very diligent work. There's a lot of like meetings that go into that, like big companies that we're talking to, and they take like 5-6 meetings to like actually understand what's happening. So there's already been lots of positive answer to Klima Infinity, and then yeah, that report is just like further evidence that like you need to do, you just need to do more. What is kind of missing in a lot of these reports is like the actual market fundamentals of a lot of these, concepts. Like people talk about like, oh, we got to do something about carbon and like all this stuff, but like no one really talks about like underlying issues within carbon markets, and the primary one is liquidity, right? And liquidity basically governs everything. So once you have liquidity on a particular product, commodity, whatever you do, it's freely tradable. And once you have tradable commodities, you bring traders, you bring people who speculate on it, and you bring all sorts of ecosystem partners like financial products and derivatives that come with it. And that's like often overlooked in like carbon markets. They're like, yeah, well, you just create a carbon project and then sell it. Like, well, okay, well, who's buying it? Like, is there composability? Like, if you ever tried to buy carbon, it's like the most complicated. It's like going to a grocery store and looking down the aisle and like every single item is a type of carbon. And you're like, okay, well, which one do I buy and why? Right? Like so it's a yeah, and basically what Klima has created is liquidity. So then instead of looking at an aisle of 300 items in your grocery store, you're looking at the bulk bin and there's like 8 of them, and then you just basically like choose like which item you want. Okay, I want like a scoop of nature carbon, and I want a scoop of regular carbon, and I want a scoop of like ocean carbon or whatever you end up choosing, and those basically have like these implications of that you can sell a lot more of it, which is what is required in that whole report from the UN is volume. Like they talk about like we need to do more. We can't do more without a liquid market. It needs to be more volume. It has to be more, and you have to do those things. And then basically creates this whole ecosystem, and so Klima is basically at the center of all this. Like it sits as this liquidity flywheel that's what we've created, and this liquidity flywheel is now composable to any type of carbon asset that comes on chain, right? So we have, MCO2, we have BCTs, stuff coming from Flow, like when they finally launch, the C3 guys have something launching, I think today or tomorrow or whatever their ton is. Like whenever those things are all running, and there's probably gonna be more. Like this won't be the last. Nori, I don't know if you guys saw they raised 7 million. Maybe if they ever end up deciding to do like a proper carbon ton that's verified and monitored, maybe we can go with that. Regen, like there's so many people working on things, and we sit at the center of all of it. It's like if you were like the yeah, Cujo wrote the aggregator for retirement, and he's like, it's like this is like the Uniswap v2 router of smart contracts. I was like, yeah, it is. Essentially, what he's written is a piece of code that allows you to route through all these deep pools and choose whatever tonnage you want in a very specific composable way. And this is massive, right? Like in DeFi, it's not totally useful. Like people are still trying to wrap their heads around how this is valuable. But in the TradFi world, like they really get it. The biggest complaint of all of them has always been, okay, well, how do I participate? Like we spoke to many carbon desks and many people who are really, really participating. Some already do in some fashion, like they basically bridge tonnage, they arbitrage the price between off chain and on chain. They keep inventory on chain, et cetera, et cetera. However, the wider majority of them have no idea how to interact with it. Like they've reached out to us and said like things like, well, hey, like we work in X and YZ market. We don't really fully understand how to interact with Klima, but we really want to. And so it's slowly changing. So like Mobilum is like a good integration that'll probably change a lot of that. and that's like probably going to drive a lot of the conversion on that. Like, so one number to go by in terms of like where we are as a protocol is number of users. So if you look at that chart on the Dune one, it's like 60,000. It's been 60,000 pretty steadily for the last couple months, and that's basically that's going to change with a lot of this like ease of integration, because there are so many people working on climate stuff, but very few working on climate DeFi stuff. So like we sit in this weird niche of like in between the two. And once you convert all those people who are working on climate onto DeFi, it's Bob's your uncle. You're gonna have a lot more demand. You're gonna have a lot of people like trying to integrate all sorts of interesting things. Klima Infinity being the first one, we've already seen like so many people already trying to do very sophisticated things. So to answer your question, the initial question, which is there anything coming out of that report? That report like comes out every year, right? There's always like somebody saying something, and there's always like more gas on the pedal for, okay, we need more action, more this, more and more funding gets announced from like EU, other nations, like Canada, US, they all announce like funds that they say like, oh, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do that. Australia has like a massive program too, and so they're all looking at moving in this direction, and every year gets bigger. So being at the crux of like the beginning is super key, because then we'll be in everything, right? You'll see like it'll be synonymous with carbon markets. You'll be like, oh yeah, we have to deal with Klima. Like those guys like basically built them, rebuilt them entirely to be functional.
Okay, thank you for that. I got just another quick side question. It's just I tried pitching the idea for a shipping company, and I tried to do it for another company also here in Denmark. Both of them were just like, is there anything we could see? Do you have any materials or anything? Will you have this in the future for because you have such a big community? Would there be like a tool for the community to use to go out and pitch the idea for different companies?
Yeah, so I think this is available in the Klima Infinity deck. You can probably ask Sai or somebody who's in partnerships who has it. It's already ready. You can just take this. It's like a pitch deck. You go and like explain to them how it works, and then you can sell it, right?
Okay, that's cool. I'll try and ask him. Thanks. Thank you.
For sure. And yeah, just to elaborate a little more on that Klima Infinity partner pipeline, I know it sparked a lot of discussion and excitement in the chat. The way we see Klima Infinity right now is as a white glove service, right? Where we're working with each partner that we onboard, having many meetings, as Archie was saying, and helping them understand what they're really signing up for, how to estimate their carbon footprint so they know how much, to buy in terms of both Klima and carbon offsets themselves. And then, we're going to be working with them to basically use the retirement aggregator that we were just talking about to offset manually. The next step in that development, right, is to start automating some of that stuff, automating the onboarding so that it's easier for a company to just show up and, they've got their carbon footprint estimated from a tool like Offsetra or Dovu, and they're able to just put in the number, make the pledge, and their dashboard will automatically be populated, with the amount of Klima that they need to purchase to participate in, in Klima Infinity, and with different options for them to sort of take their carbon neutral pledge or climate positive pledge to the next level, in line with all the different things we talked about, right? So like staking Klima, using Klima to swap for offsets and retiring them, as well as bonding, potentially bonding offsets for Klima as well. So yeah, like long term, the vision is that anybody who wants to offset for their organization basically just needs to show up with a footprint and a digital wallet, and they're able to go from there without a whole lot of touch points. But right now it's a very manual process to onboard each KI partner. The other thing I wanted to elaborate a little more on what Archie was talking about with like DeFi protocol integration. So like Cujo and I have been working with Lens protocol to get a feature added where basically, so like the idea behind Lens protocol, it's a little bit involved, but basically they're trying to build a framework for social networks to operate on blockchains. They're building a social graph. And the idea is that when somebody, when a fee is charged, in this system, there's an option that the publisher who's collecting the fee has through this function that Kujo and I built for them, that will automatically redeem or will automatically retire that fee in the form of BCT. So that's sort of an example of the really the power that DeFi gives to unlock continuous carbon offsetting, so that instead of carbon offsetting being something that you do like once a quarter or once a year as a manual action, it becomes a part of every transaction, a part of every interaction that you have on chain. And I think that's all the alpha we had to share with you today. If nobody else has any other questions, I think we can wrap there, but want to give people an opportunity.
Just quickly, I wanted to see, does anyone want to speak about bonding, about trying to get people to understand that bonding is also beneficial? I was wondering, Korean, if you wanted to speak a bit about that. Brian?
Yes, I'm sorry. Yeah, bonding is very beneficial for the protocol, right? So I guess there's two sides of the same coin, the staking and the bonding. Staking provides short-term support for the price, or for the price of the token, because staking doesn't provide like nascent, or I guess like concrete value, right? The reason why you stake is because it's a huge supply expansion we're having right now, going from a very small million supply to a supply needed to facilitate currency transactions, so like hundreds of millions or even billions. That's a lot of expansion, and like many people said, with a lot of expansion, it means that there's gonna be a lot of pressure on the price itself, right? Staking means that we put all the expansion towards stakers, which are holding, and that means that that reduces the price or reduces the pressure significantly, right? So 90% is staked. That means 90% of this expansion is gone towards the holders. What bonding does is provide actual concrete value into the protocol, which it can rely on to derive value from, right? What happens is that during the up times, or like during all times of growth, whenever you're growing or whenever you're in a delta state, you will acquire value, because what happens is that you, as a user, when you bond, you essentially give assets to the protocol, and it will give you Klima, right? And what happens for that, and the benefit for that, is that during the harder times, like we're experiencing right now, the protocol can use this as backing, or use this as a form of stability or a form of confidence for the users, right? You gotta understand that like confidence is really dependent on the market, right? And there are sometimes confidence can come and go very easily, right? When everything's up and everybody's all happy, confidence is very high. And then during more of the bear market that we're seeing now, confidence is very low. When you have assets and reserves backing your token, that gives users confidence that's less undeniable, right? That's less dependent on market forces. That's less dependent on, I guess, social consensus, right? That's really what this all is, right? At a high level, social consensus that we, as we work together and as we acquire value together, you develop this currency that you can use for the current markets, right? So that's what bonding helps us with, right? If we don't have bonding and we only have staking, then the protocol wouldn't work. And if we only have bonding without staking, then it also wouldn't work. If we only have bonding, we only have the bonding mechanism. What happens is that you get diluted significantly, right? Because you have staking mechanism that puts most of the expansion to the users, you feel way less of the dilution that bonding is, right? Even though the supply expanded a lot, right? The true supply, so like the wrapped as Klima, has only grown around like 30-40%. I haven't checked quite recently, but let's say 30-40%, right? With only a 30-40% expansion, we've gained almost $100 million in market value, right? compare that to other protocols, or compare it to a lot of protocols, like the DeFi 1.0 protocols. You look at their expansion, or I guess even look at Bitcoin, right? Bitcoin started from zero supply, and then now it's has a cap of 25 million. It has no value in the treasury, right? I mean, yeah, it has value in that it has integrations in that, but all protocols will slowly get down no matter what, right? We have this alternative mechanism that lets us acquire value through all times, right? And through the good times and through the bad times. So that's what bonding does, Like the example I like to use is a Bitcoin user or a Bitcoin holder, hodling from 20K to 40K and then back down to 10K, right? As a user, you acquired no value when it went up to 40K. Even though it went up to 40K, your bag is still the same, or I guess the value, you didn't gain any value there. When it goes back down to 20K or back when you started, you gain no value. With the bonding mechanism, the protocol gains value due to upside. So even when it's at 40K, and even if you don't sell, the protocol sells for you. The protocol, siphons off the top for you. It does that for you so that you don't have to sell. And the end goal is that, as if you stay here for the long term or stay here towards the end, you get to realize that value. So I guess I've been noticing a misconception that bonding is very mercenary and, is bad for protocol, but I guess that's what really 3-3 is, the game theory, is that even with DeFi being very competitive and being, against each other, you can use that energy and make it such that everybody benefits from that. And I think that's what 3-3 really is, right? It's not like cooperation. 3 isn't cooperation. It's almost forced cooperation, You're not cooperating because that's or you're not cooperating because it's like the best or nice thing to do, or is because you guys are friends. You guys are cooperating because it is the best thing to do economically wise for everybody, right? Or I guess for you. And consequently it's best for everybody. So a little bit of a ramble, a little bit of a Shakespearean speech, but yeah, that's what I think bonding does. And I think that's how it connects with the bigger picture of this protocol.
Yes, and to that end, we're actually getting ready to launch a bond discount bot. It's been in the works for a while. It's taken a little longer than we hope to get it developed, but it'll allow users to specify in Discord that they want to be notified when a bond reaches a certain discount, and that will hopefully help increase the community's participation in the bond market. Yeah, writing a book. We'd love to see a Klima movie be made at some point. I'm sure there's plenty of material to work with for dramatic purposes. Oh, Jesus, Archie.
Stop leaking, man. I keep telling you this offline.
You're going to get us in trouble.
I'm gonna do it again.
No. Leon Tari told us not to leak, and then like the moment after, it really leaked, and it was very funny.
He can't stop us. He's not here right now. Okay, here it is again for everyone that was not paying attention last time.
While Archie is leaking about his, I'll leak an idea I had with bonds, right? So inverse bonds, right? Inverse bonds allow a protocol, or allow you as a user to bring in
Screenshot
Klima.
it just in case.
Let Klima sorry, Archie's funny as shit. You can bring Klima, and then you can acquire assets from the protocol, right? A lot of people have been commenting like, okay, if we use inverse bonds and if we do it with the BCT, whatever, we kind of shoot ourselves in the foot, right? And I argue that's a very short-term problem. Once we kind of establish a market, and once BCT establishes that retirement has value, right? Which is less of an if, but more of a when. When it happens, I think that'll be a lesser problem mitigated. But there is an idea to be had where instead of offset, instead of you using inverse bonds to acquire BCTs, you know, you have an inverse bond that gives you the option to offset a bond, right? So this couldn't been done without DeFi or ReFi because before BCT was kind of a thing, there wasn't really any use case of a carbon offset other than the offset, right? But now once BCT becomes this new, or any carbon asset, once there's flows, GMT, there's MOS, there's UBO, MBO, yes, ice gonna kill us. There's more value of BCT other than the offset opportunity, right? So you can kind of separate that. You can separate that, or I guess, yeah, separate that value from what value BCT gets from the ability to be offsetted, and the other DeFi stuff like use as collateral, use as speculation for leveraging a maker, or synthetics, or all that crap, right? What we're looking at is that you can use inverse bonds, and then when the user offs I guess makes the inverse bonds, you get a note, a option essentially that will allow you to offset the amount that you would have gotten for the market value, and it would expiry of a year or something. And what that allows us to do is that it allows us to make issues offset bonds without the need of BCTs being expanded from the being expanded to a while again. And what this does is that it kind of allows us to make this new system that instead of corporations or individuals using regular offsets, or I guess like carbon tokens as a natural way to offset, they can just use Klima as the way to issue or to offset their carbon emissions, right? Why would you offset with BCT or UBO or MBO or all that when you can offset with Klima and get a discount for it, right? And that will happen is that all the demand or offset will go to Klima via inverse bonds there. And it would make a very nice system where carbon producers or carbon offset credit producers will funnel the demand onto the bonds, and then the retail will funnel all the demand to inverse bonds. So you kind of have this layered system of economics where each system is kind of isolated from each other, and you can kind of do some like crazy DeFi stuff on that while still providing that super easy interface for retail to use. Yeah, we'll post something about that later, but that's a little high level idea I wanted to put out there. But I think that's a good time to stop. That's a good place to stop unless we have more questions.
Yeah, stop now before we leak more alpha.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, thanks for coming, everybody. I hope you learned some stuff, and we're happy to discuss anything we talked about in more detail in the policy forum.
Thanks everyone for stopping by.
Peace.
See you guys.
Not much. So